Hi, it's Jack Curran. I'm a black and white landscape photographer, and as you can see up on the screen, there's probably 30, 40, I think I have 50 images that over the course of the next several months, I'm going to be working on and kind of giving away some free content here and showing you a lot about my process. I'll go through a lot of these images. Most of these are not some of my more complex images. Some of them are fairly complex. So there'll be a lot of tools that we work in Lightroom and really try to bring out the range of light. My son, who is my social media and helps me with my marketing, tells me I need to give away free content. So I'm happy to do that. And if it helps anybody get a little bit better at the craft, um, or the art and the craft of black and white landscape photography, that just thrills me to death. You'll see in some of my more full featured videos that I really go into a lot more depth with a lot of these. But so what we're going to do is we're going to go through these. We're going to distribute them over the next several months and, well, maybe for the next year. And I really hope you enjoy them. So stay tuned. Keep coming back. And we'll have something new and different for you, throughout the upcoming months. Have a great day. Hey, Jack Curran. We're back. Let's rock and roll. This is an image that I captured down in Naples, Florida. There was this wonderful thunderstorm going on out in the Gulf of Mexico, and this cloud just continually evolved the entire time. So I spent like an hour shooting these clouds, and it was just wonderful. The exposure on this thing is 25 seconds, so you'll notice that there's some motion in the cloud. You can see I've approached it from a couple different ways, the raw at the bottom, and then a really kind of dark water with this kind of glow where the cloud and this cloud bank is here. And then there's another version here where I'm using the shadows in the clouds down here and this bigger shadow here, and then the highlights from here and here. So, I can kind of go either way with it. I like the one on the left that has the black base. It tends to stand a little bit firmer from holding the picture together and the eye not traveling out of the frame. The one on the right might be a little bit more realistic, but so let's rock and roll, and we'll probably come up with a third one. And what I do is I work on these things, then I go back and I walk away, then I come back and I work them all over again. So we're going to work in Lightroom here. I work in Lightroom CC, but we're going to work on this image right now. So let's go. One of the first things I'm going to do is I notice I could just do correct with the horizon, but I'm just going to quickly knock this out, correct that, and then I'm going to go down and enable chromatic aberration and the camera profile. So we'll just kind of fix those real quick. A couple other things that I like to do when I first start, especially in my conversions in black and white, I like to go and take my exposure way down and see how far I can push detail in the shadows. So I can just barely see in here where there's some highlights underneath these dark shadows in the rain. I still have some texture down in here. There's a little bit of texture down in the water, but it's interesting the way it's going dark. And then I will go back and I'll do the same thing. I'll start pushing the highlights to see how far. Like this is completely blown out down here, but now I'm noticing the layers from dark clouds to medium clouds to lighter clouds to bright white. And I'm starting to see the very edge of the highlights down here and this textured area over here. I'm starting to actually notice that the water is very soft, and all of that's coming out. I notice this highlight along the edge here is brighter than the gray background. I also notice that this cloud and this highlight over here, this gray sky, late afternoon sky, is starting to blend together. So if I want the cloud to separate, I need to think about how I'm going to get that to separate. You can see it's still blending together a little bit over there. Real quickly, a lot of times, people will go in here and use sliders to look at stuff, but when you work with blue, you're going to notice that you're going to introduce a lot of noise into a blue if you start pushing it too high. You can see it really changes quickly, so be very, very careful with blue. I'm going to fix that real quick. Get rid of that little thing with my spot tool, and then I'm going to go back down and we're going to take a look at it. I can go in and I can look at yellow. The problem with yellow here is the more intense it gets, when I convert it, that yellow is going to be blown out to a pretty intense white. Similar thing I used to do back in the day when I was shooting 4x5 or working in the darkroom. When I worked with my 4x5s, I would put colored filters in front of the lens to get colors to react with black and white film differently. Now I do the same thing with the sliders. Also, what we're going to primarily do a lot of today is dodging and burning using radial tools and adjustment brushes, contrast light. Again, I would have a board with a hole in it or a paddle with a little dodging tool on it, and those are the same tools and techniques that we're using today that the masters use 50, 60, 70 years ago, all the way up through some people still printing with silver today. So we're going to teach you a little bit about that process as we go through this. Again, lots of dodging and burning, manipulating, controlling light, trying to find the range of light, and really pushing it. So let me just start with a basic conversion here. And I'm going to bump the contrast up a little bit. I want to see what happens. I'm going to move it rather dramatically first just to see where it goes. I'm going to start down here. I want to push the highlights. This area down here is getting blown out, so I want to be very careful there. If I blow it out, it's very hard to come back and get the detail out of it later. Whites, same thing. Not going to do much. Blacks, bringing a little black into it. What's interesting about that is I can see now why I would have liked that darker shape down here in the bottom before in that other image. Look at clarity, you can see how the contrast is affecting that on top of this contrast. So we're going to work a lot of layers, and we're going to kind of build this thing up step by step. One of the first things I like to do is I like to take a bigger radial filter. It's already inverted, so it's this little inverted click here. I'm going to reset it real quick. And then I'm going to take the exposure down so that the outside edges get a little bit darker. And what that does is it actually helps the eye focus on the center of the frame and not travel out of the frame as much as if you were looking at it without the darker edges. So I want to be careful I don't do too much, but I'm going to do enough to at least create some interest there right away. Okay, so I'm going to go back, I'm going to do a new brush, and then I'm going to do kind of the same thing. And what I want to do here is I'm going to reset this. I'm going to take the invert off. So now I'm going to work the inside of the radial. I'm going to turn this so it doesn't really hit this light area over here, because I'm going to go in and I'm going to start really working the contrast in here and try and bring out highlights and whites and see what I can do as far as getting glow, and then add the clarity in there. I want to see what the dehaze will do. That's a little intense, and that'll add some noise in there too, so I got to be really careful with that as well. And you can see these clouds are moving here, so it's quite a bit different than something else. Now I'm going to take another one, and I'm just going to put it in that center area, and I'm going to start to, I might dehaze that just a little so it starts to look like it's going to glow. I'm going to send it up. I'm going to turn it a little. I'm going to go for highlights and whites right in there. So now the center of this storm, I'm just going to move it around. That's still a little intense here, especially in the whites. The center of the storm, I'm going to make it a little wider. Glows. I'm going to move it up a little so it isn't hitting this down here. And I'm going to go with one more new one right in through here. I'm going to go dehaze just a little, open it up a little on the exposure, and I'm going to slowly but very softly connect the two. Now I can do a lot of this with a brush as well. Probably need to widen that so it smooths and blends in here. I'm going to do that a little bit. I'm going to take my feather up a little so that it slowly softens out to the edges. Because I'm going to go back in, I'm going to brush out these highlights. I'm going to brush in some density in here. But again, I've got a lot more playing to do with this. So now I've got a little bit of a glow in here. Let me just close that and get the dots out. And you can see where the glow is starting to come in here, and I've got a little contrast. I go back in, and I'm going to do one more fairly big one. Work that contrast a little bit more. take the exposure up at the same time. So I took it down pretty dark, and now I'm building it back up, and I'm trying to bring out some of that. I'm going to do another one down here, and I'm just going to really push the highlights down there. The whites, I want it open a little bit. And again, I mentioned a minute ago, I'm going to come back with a brush, and I'm going to really go in and kind of play with that and try and get a lot more detail. And then one more right over here. Turn that a little, move it up here, and see if I can get just a little bit more of the whites popping in there. Probably have to go back with a brush and really kind of touch some of these areas. And then I've got this kind of really, I'm gonna go back here and I'm gonna kind of cover up this whole water. And I liked it dark, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it dark. But first I'm going to dehaze it just to soften it a little bit more. I might even take the clarity down a little. And then I'm going to start taking the exposure down. So now I've got this nice contrast. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to take one kind of radial here. I'm going to create this light emanating from these clouds up here down over here. Try and just pop it so it has a glow in the center a little bit. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to actually start fading this out just a little bit. There's a little dark, and again, I may have to go in there and brush this later. So let's see how we do here. We should probably have one a little lighter here for underneath, maybe moving a little bit farther back. And now I have this other one. I have this little darkness down in here. Let me just see if I can get that cloud a little darker through there. And then I'll go back and I'll brush this just a little bit. So I'm going to grab an adjustment brush. I'm going to take the exposure down a little. Shadows. Whoops, that's a biggie. And I'm just going to paint that edge in just a little bit there. And that's mainly so that the eye doesn't travel too far off the screen. Do the same thing over here. Just paint that out a little bit. Okay, so this maybe a little bit more and smooth that out just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to grab this. I'm going to do a new brush, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to hit some of these areas, and I'm going to darken some areas of the clouds just a little bit so that there's a little bit more intensity in there, a little bit more contrast. I'm going to keep adjusting the size of my brush size, and I'm just going to try and not hit a lot of the highlights, you know. I don't like that one. I'm going to Command Z, do that just a little, maybe size it a little bit differently and just pops right through there, under there, over here. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get a new brush. I'm going to double click it. I'm going to reset it, just a little exposure, a little highlight, a little white, and I'm going to go in and I could use a range mask here when I first start so that I'm just working on the highlights. And I want this one to glow, you know, out from behind that cloud. So let's see what this looks like if I open it up a little. Whoa, way too much. I'm going to get a new one so that I don't double up on that. And then I'm just going to go in and pop some of these little highlights down in here. Bring some of these up. And try to create depth. And what's nice about this is you have this this dark, and then this light band, and then a little bit dark underneath, and then this light band, and then this glow in the center that draws the eye in, and you have a little bit of darkness on the corner. So it's really transitions all the way through the frame. I'm going to quickly go back to the library. So here's the one we're working on right now. Here's the kind of darker one over here, and here's an intermediate one from another attempt. You can see the intensity in the clouds down here. I'm not liking that as much. I do like a little bit denser down here and a little bit more contrast overall. I like where this glow is here. So I would go back and just kind of keep reworking this one, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to go back to the basic panel here, and I'm going to look at the highlights, and I'm going to work the contrast a little bit this way. So I'm going to take it down. It's a little too intense there. I shouldn't have played with the lights, maybe just the highlights. And then I'm going to play with the shadows a little. I want to go back and I want to look at this. I'm going to spread it out a little. Bring it up just a little. Same with this one. Just a smidge, but not so much that it gets. I'm going to take that shadow. I'm going to lighten that one up just a little. All right. I'm going to take a peek at these right here. Can't really tell if I'm introducing noise. I'll have to go in there and look. But that's looking a little bit better there. This has gotten more contrasty. I'm going to take this, I'm going to spread it out a little. And I might move it up just a little. And then overall exposure up a little. It's kind of nice. Spread this one a little wider. That's kind of nice. So you can kind of see where we're going here. Sorry, I see a spot. Just got to get rid of it. Can't stand it. Anyway. So now you can kind of see where we've gone here. And again, I might go back, take a look at the overall here. Open it just a little overall because it's a little intense. I see one other thing that I want to do with the adjustment brush. There's this really nice glow underneath the clouds here. So I'm going to reset this. And I'm going to open that up and open up the white. And then I'm just going to kind of try and paint under there a little bit with highlights. Now this is the same thing I would have done in the darkroom where maybe I dodged it. And let's see if I do white, that'll get me there slowly. This highlight probably won't do much at all. Exposure will do a lot, right? So if I did that much and create that separation between this cloud and that, I need to go back and I need to bring it down so that I don't have a really horizon line where that's hitting the water. So put a little white one underneath there, try and feather it in. A little bit bigger. Now this is where if I wanted to use a range mask, I could go over there and use luminance, and I could just go in and change that and just kind of affect a certain area. But let me do this. And you can see how that's just kind of affecting a certain range. Because it's middle gray, it's kind of affecting really that middle area. So effectively, it's not doing very much. But I do like the way it did that. I'm going to go in there and just hit a new one. And just reset that. Take that exposure down and the shadow down just a little. And just edge that just a little. Okay? So that's it. It's a really pretty quick conversion. Go back to the library. You can see this is the new one. This is one I did a long time ago. This is one that is a lot different, maybe a little bit more contrasty, especially down on these shallow clouds. So I'm going to pick this and this. You can see those two are really, really different. And then if we go back in, well, heck, I don't know where they are. So they're in here somewhere. Anyway, I'll find them. There they are. Let's see, I think it's this one and this one. And then we'll take a quick peek at that. So there's one. Here's a new one. You know, there's some things I like about both of them. Anyway, I hope that helps. Really, again, a lot of dodging and burning. We're not in too much intensity with layers or anything like that, but you can really do a lot with just simple conversions and building and layering and creating transitions and looking for the flow of light, the range of light, and how you want, you know, that to come to life. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you soon. We'll have some more coming.